In April of 1985, an unthinkable happened. A new Soviet leader came onto a street and started talking to regular people. Not political mumbo-jumbo, but regular people's talk. He was asking them how they doing, what concerned them, did they approve of party line, did they approve of the latest steps the government took.
Хотелось бы услышать, а что думают ленинградцы о нашей политике, как мы шаги в правильном направлении делаем или нет?
At the end of that conversation, one of the ladies asked Mikhail Gorbachev to please be closer to the people. Now, Gorbachev was surrounded and squished by people. He looked at the lady and with a witty smile came back. How can I be closer than this? And everyone started laughing.
Вот для этого всего все это нужно. Ну куда ж бликать? Вот по пьяницам, если кто из вас на этой беседе.
That was when regular Soviet people understood that things were about to start changing. You all know how Gorby looked from the outside of Russia. The good guy that opened up the USSR to the world, that ended the Cold War, put human face to Russians. The hero. In this video, I will tell you the story of Gorby, how he was seen by the eyes of a young Russian Soviet boy and by many other Soviets. The inside story. In the next video, I'll tell you why, despite all good that Gorby did, many Russians despised him. And then in the video after, I will tell you how Gorby looked from the outside of Russia, from the rest of the world. And in the final video, I will dive deeper into the legacy that Mikhail Gorbachev left behind and that is still living today. August 31st, 2022, Mikhail Gorbachev died yesterday. A very sad and ironic day. The best leader Russia has ever had died at the same time as the results of his life's work, his legacy, being erased and destroyed. It seems like Mikhail Gorbachev was very disappointed and had nothing to live for. Incredibly sad. Looks like he just gave up. But back to 1985, we had been used to Soviet leaders being very old and very ill. Brezhnev, Andropov, then Chernenko. He was a very ill man who could barely walk and speak, and he was replaced by Mikhail Gorbachev, a 54-year young, energetic, well-spoken, charismatic, smart, witty, a Soviet leader that was not old and bedridden? That was already something by itself. In April of that year, his meetings with regular folks started appearing on TV. Young, charismatic, funny, witty, talking to people, not a Muscovite, from a province, speaking a very funny provincial accent. He was one of us. Gorbachev came into power at a very difficult time. The USSR was very sick with inefficient economy, planned economy that was very badly planned, no pun intended. And Gorbachev appeared in that very difficult time. And then, right at the beginning of his reign, he did the unthinkable. He пошел в народ. Came out to the people. First, it was Arbat Street, right next to Kremlin, and it was not televised. It was sort of a test run. But people started spreading this mouth to mouth, and the news spread out with a speed of fire. He's one of us, people were saying. He speaks to us. He's normal. He's human. And that he was.
Поэтому я вас слушаю.
Many thought he did that out of his character because that was him. I don't think that was that simple. Mikhail Gorbachev was a young politician, a relatively young leader, and he was facing fight from Politburo, and it was a dogfight, obviously. So he decided to establish himself, and he made the move, all right. In the Russian epic, the Tsars, and Gorbachev was the Tsar at the beginning, goes without saying, because all the Soviet leaders were Tsars. So the Tsars, when they needed to get backing from people, they came out to the people, and they spoke to the people. That was a mythical action connecting the Tsars and the people. And that was exactly what Mikhail Gorbachev did. The mythical, legendary move of Russian epic that got him support of regular folks. That was brilliant. Well, some could think that his actions were nothing but Soviet PR and just image kind of thing. What followed those meetings with people were nothing short of astonishing. He proved that he not only talked the talk, but he walked the walk. I personally think that Gorby was actually a gift to Russian Soviet people. Judge for yourself. I'm gonna give you a very short summary of the things that he did in the following years. The way he walked the walk. He didn't start any wars. On the contrary, he ended the Afghan war. He did not jail any political opponents. On the contrary, he introduced the new paradigm of Soviet society, the pluralism of opinions, where people were, for the first time in history of the USSR, allowed to have their own opinion that deviated from the party line, and they could do that safely. He stopped the Cold War. He opened up the USSR to the world. He opened up the world to us, regular people. He didn't steal any money or assets from the Russian people and from the state. He didn't want to destroy his country. On the contrary, he wanted to improve and modernize it. He was the only Soviet leader who did not oppress Christianity. On the contrary, he brought it from underground into the mainstream. He was the only Soviet leader who changed old Soviet dogma. Communists cannot be Christian. In my mind, he was honest, decent, and sincere man. This is how Mikhail Gorbachev was generally remembered as the leader, but this is how I remember him, myself, Konstantin. When I first heard of Gorbachev, I was very young, 9 years old, and I still remember the first days as he went to the people. I remember my parents were so surprised and so touched by that, and they were discussing this in the kitchen, saying, did you, like, what's going on? He talks to regular people on the street, you know, he's one of us. I remember that very first thing about Mikhail Gorbachev. I remember 1987 when he made a public address to the entire country and introduced the idea that the Soviet citizens could start and own, operate business. They could create products and sell them. They could make profits and keep them. That was a life changer for us. When that news became public, my cousin went out and he started his own company. He started making sports shoes and he started making money. His life was changed by that event, and life of many, many other people. Early bird businessmen, we call them. I was 11 years old, but I already knew, I understand that was changing everything. People were just boiling, and Gorbachev's name was all over. He was such a popular politician. He was the hero of the people. He was our man, okay? He was working hard to make lives of regular people easier. Freedom of opinions was another huge milestone. That was changing my life, because in school we were allowed to say things that we hadn't been allowed to say before. In our history books, new facts started appearing, and that was a huge deal of Gorbachev's policies. For example, Back in 1989, I learned that the Soviet Union actually invaded Finland. For the first time in history of the USSR, that was known, that was made fact, okay? My parents didn't know about that. When I first came from school and I told them about that, they were absolutely shocked. They did not believe me. My mom asked me to give the history book and she wrote it, and she was so upset. She hasn't spoken of that ever since, because in her point of view, you know, the country that she was born and grew up in, they couldn't invade anyone, okay? That's how she was brought up and spent all her life thinking. And all of a sudden, things were changing and the truth was being introduced, you know, bit by bit into our society. That was Gorbachev. That's what he did for us. Gorbachev was the one who allowed Yeltsin to be born. I clearly remember their political stand and Yeltsin becoming the opposition. But you know what? The Gorbachev didn't do a thing to crush him using KGB or police or army or whatever. He let Yeltsin be in opposition. That had been unheard of before. And these things were introduced over such short period of time. 86, 87, 88, you know, 3-4 years, 89. You gotta understand that the Soviet Union had been like a swamp until 1985, and when Gorbachev came, he added fresh water. Somehow he let river flow into that swamp and change everything, and that was changing our lives for good in a very, very good way. So, what was Mikhail Gorbachev's most important legacy? He planted seeds of liberty in the minds of Soviet people, in the minds of us. He gave us freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom of movement, freedom of doing business. He showed us that fear didn't have to be part of our lives. The question I'm asking is, did Russians need and value liberty back then? Did they welcome the reforms that gave them freedoms in the 80s? Did they value the freedoms in the years that followed after? I think answering these questions will help to answer the biggest question about Mikhail Gorbachev. Why, despite doing so much good for the Russians, why many Russians despised Mikhail Gorbachev? I will try to answer this question in my next video right here. Please watch it.